Hello and welcome. This is xger21 over at puremtgo.com, and this is the final match of my friendly sealed Hour of Devastation at Amonkhet. And to get started, I have an acceptable hand, nothing too spectacular. I can play at least two of my cards and I have a finisher, and it's time to get rolling. It's definitely better than any 6 that I would get, so a fairly easy keep. And then drawing a 2-drop there is pretty huge, even if it does not pair all that well against the Bitterblade Warrior. However, my opponent just decides to remove the Exemplar, which is, I think, an interesting choice. I'm not sure I would have done that in the same position. It's just not necessarily a big enough threat, and the fact is he could have blocked it to start with. So it seems like an odd thing to use what could be a very helpful removal spell that early. For instance, he could have saved it for the Carrion Screecher. Although he does have that. The Bitterbow Sharpshooters. Those are big and scary enough that I want to get rid of it right away. Not to mention that it prevents my flyer from going anywhere. And here it looks like we're having yet another MTGO bug of some kind. Is it stuck there? So my opponent looks to be splashing the Resolute Survivors. It's a bit interesting they don't choose to exert there, just to get in and not have to worry about it. I'm not sure if they have a plan for later. I'm also a little bit surprised that they don't trade there and try and protect their life total. They're down to 2 cards in hand. I have 4 cards in hand at this point, and I'm significantly ahead in the race to the point that I don't think it's wise for them to take more damage. And even if they exert both of these next turn, they basically only tie up the damage race, and then they have both their creatures tapped, which is not necessarily a position you want to be in. And it looks like, again, MTGO is just having a little bit of a fit with the replay. So here I'm just going to go ahead and, play my Gravedigger, get back my Exemplar of Strength. And I'll go ahead and just skip to the end of the turn. It seems like was getting a little stuck there. So my opponent here just played and exiled Appeal to Authority, and that's actually ends up being quite a bit of damage here. And it now makes a little bit more sense they didn't exert last turn as they wanted to exert this next turn. And they don't hit me for quite lethal, but it still puts an interesting pressure on me here. I very fortunately draw the second Swamp, which lets me go ahead and cast the Torment of Hailfire, even at just 4. He has 1 card in hand, 7 life. So, even if it went the worst possible for me, he still has to get rid of one of his 2 creatures. He can't actually go down to 1 life because then I'll just kill him with this Carrion Screecher. So more than likely, at this point, the spell kills both of his creatures, gets rid of the card in his hand, puts him down to 4, and then I can swing in for lethal. So he'd have to have a particularly strong card at that point to not lose, but he just had a Forest in hand. And as you can tell, he sent me a message, which was him just being a little bit bitter about me having that card at that moment. And now we're on to game 2. Alright, and here we have a hand that isn't super great. It would be much better with a 3rd land, but if I can reach land number 3, it does become quite a strong hand, as it has several pieces of removal, as well as creatures I can play, even though it is quite heavy on 3 drops, which is not necessarily where you want to be. And my opponent decides that he wants to just get in for those 3 damage. And I probably should have there attacked in the hope that he blocked, because if he did block there, essentially I could have 2-for-1'd him by using the Ambuscade. But here I just wait for him to attack. And again, I probably should have with first strike damage on the stack, or haven't already done, I should have used the Ambuscade to kill off the Bitterblade Warrior, although with him having Magma Spray that wouldn't have happened. However, it did let me use the Splendid Agony to kill off his Glorybound Initiate, which would probably prove to be a much stronger threat that I'd have to face. And here he's just playing the Appeal to Authority again. Honestly, I think it's a bit weird to play it this early in the game, and just in an attempt to get in basically 8 damage. I don't necessarily think that's actually worthwhile at this point, especially considering how powerful the card is, as it's one of those ones that lets you finish off games out of nowhere. And so here I kill off my opponent's creatures and just keep playing out more creatures. I decide I can let the sharpshooters live for a turn before I kill them, although it does put me into a dangerous life total. My opponent decides for some reason not to attack there, but I take the opportunity to kill the sharpshooters anyway. I needed them off the board regardless. And here I offer the trade, knowing that I can get the card back with the Gravedigger, so I'm not super concerned. And here I do the same thing, just keep attacking my opponent, bringing him down, and saving the Gravedigger. I'm a little bit surprised at this point that my opponent hasn't taken any of the trades I've been offering, as it just seems unlikely to be wise. And then we actually see that he was actually splashing the third white card, well, sort of white card. And so we've seen several of them now, so he's probably just full on Naya. And unfortunately, I do not have any removal at the moment for the Pride Sovereign, and that's a card that gets out of hand very, very quickly. And so if my opponent was going to chump block like that, I'm surprised he waited as long as he did, unless he thought he had a different plan for it. And then here I face a Sifter Worm, which is of course never something you actually want to see, and they reveal an Open Fire, which is even less of something you want to see. And at this point I think the 4/4 is more worthwhile than the Naga Vitalist, not to mention I can just get back the Naga Vitalist as I did here. My opponent goes ahead and kills off my Naga with his Open Fire that was on top, and with his empty hand plays the Brawler. Unfortunately, this is where they get to start making tokens, and they get to keep progressing their board, where I'm just slowly falling behind. And here I just use the fact that the lifelink will keep me alive to try and keep my board as much as possible. There wasn't enough for me to profitably block everything, and then with the Pride Sovereign on the board, I'm just going to kind of slowly fall behind. And essentially here I was just looking to draw anything that would let me maintain my position. The problem is this next turn, my opponent can make 2 more cats and just attack with everything. I don't have enough blockers, so that was game, and I went ahead and conceded. See you in game 3. Alright, we're back for game 3. This is another one of those hands that is not particularly strong, but seems very unlikely to be worse than a random 6 off the top. And again, I happen to top deck the Exemplar of Strength, which does make the hand actually significantly better, as it wasn't super impressive to start with, but the Exemplar is quite a strong card when you can get it down on turn 2, particularly on the play. And so here I pretty much have to offer up the trade, as I will just end up never getting through with that again. Unfortunately, I managed to not hit my swamp for several turns now, as my opponent just starts getting this. Once I do hit the swamp, I decide I have to immediately kill the Pride Sovereign. If I can stop it from causing any problems to begin with, I think I'm in a much better position. And here I just trade in the Feral Prowler for a card, as I feel like that's just going to be better for me overall. Luckily I hit another land, which lets me play a giant brick wall for my opponent to have to get through. And even though they do get to play a Sifter Worm, I fortunately have another removal spell for that. And then they reveal Driven to Despair, which is actually potentially a very damaging card. And they don't have a black mana to splash it, and I haven't seen them play a black mana at this point, so I'm not super concerned about the Despair portion. They might be able to get through and use the Driven to draw a card or two, but they'll lose creatures in the process. So I go ahead and drop the Ruin Rat. I save the removal, as I'm guessing they're going to play something here. And on the attack, I go ahead and just kill off the Sifter Worm in a fairly unsurprising turn of events. And then luckily I actually draw a very large beater, which is quite good in this position. And this is where my opponent goes ahead and plays their Driven. I think at this point they're just trying to close out the game. They're down to 4 minutes, and this is one of those attacks that's just, they either have some kind of trick that I have to be concerned about, or they're just desperately trying to draw cards and find a way to close out the game. I don't think they have enough tricks to save all of their creatures, so it's a fairly easy block here of just killing off 3 of their creatures, taking a bunch of damage, and they get to draw some cards. But I'm not overly concerned. My opponent there chose to use their open fire that they drew with to kill the Decimator Beetle, which is probably the better choice, but it still does leave me with a giant Colossopede on the board. And then I play down the Scrounger, so it's primarily just so I can start gaining some life and protecting my life total here. And at this point, my opponent is pretty far behind on board. With 2 cards in hand, I'm able to cast the Torment of Hailfire for 5, which would make them get rid of their 2 cards in hand, sacrifice their creature, and still have to go down to 6, which would leave them dead on board. And so there's no real way for them to recover at that point, so they go ahead and concede. Which is one of those, it's Torment of Hellfire is a card that's always been interesting in that a lot of people don't like it, and it does not do something in a lot of games, but it also lets you finish off a lot of games and win games out of nowhere. So I've come to like it quite a bit. Thank you for watching, and I will see you around.